HBO's first season of House of the Dragon was a smash hit during its run in fall of 2022. That didn't prevent the show from being controversial though, as a topic of much debate was around the show's cinematography. With House of the Dragon finally getting a physical release, it is time to look back at the series with new lenses as we dive into the 4K Blu-ray copy of the show. House of the Dragon was created by Ryan Condal and George R.R. Martin himself, with Condal and Miguel Sapochnik serving as co-showrunners. The show takes place approximately 172 years prior to the original series Game of Thrones, and sees House Targaryen at the height of their power as King Viserys I Targaryen names his daughter Princess Rhaenyra as the heir to the Iron Throne, following the death of both his wife Queen Aemma and newborn son Balon. The king eventually remarries to Alicent Hightower, Rhaenyra's childhood best friend, and schemes start to form as House Hightower tries to usurp the throne from the princess after Queen Alicent gives birth to Viserys' first living son, Aegon II. Let me give you a disclaimer before really diving into the actual Blu-ray. I did not suffer from the same issues most people seem to have had with House of the Dragon. I don't own a super expensive TV set, I don't have an OLED, but I do have something that you would consider an entry-level setup. I have a Sony X900H 4K television. It supports Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos. It cost me around, I want to say, $900 when I bought it. Again, pretty pricey, but not as pricey as an OLED set that you can get today, so it was probably the best deal that I could get at the time. And again, it is pricey, but it's very entry-level stuff. So when it came to House of the Dragon, I couldn't really complain with the image that I was seeing through my television. I could still see some of that annoying compression, especially in those darker scenes, like in episode 1 where Daemon is with his city watch, or episode 7 titled Driftmark, I believe, where they're in the beach, super dark. They try to do the pretty popular, I would want to say, things that they're trying out in Hollywood right now, where they're shooting stuff at day but they're converting them into night scenes in post. So again, all of that stuff, I could still see the compression, but at the very least with what I have, I was still able to tell what was going on and tell the features in the actors' faces. So again, not too bad. I do sympathize with those people who don't have the super fancy setups or the entry-level stuff. You shouldn't have to buy a fancy TV or any of that to enjoy your favorite TV shows or your favorite movies. So I get the frustration and I get the anger, and it's not fair for these TV shows to be putting people in those positions. And all of this brings us to this bad boy right here, the physical copy of House of the Dragon. Is it worth upgrading from simply streaming it on HBO? Well, the answer is kind of a given. Yes it is. From what I could find online, the show was shot with ARRI Alexa 65 cameras. It was finished at 4K with a 2160p transfer at 2.001. And it shows when I tell you that it feels like watching the series for the very first time all over again. I am not kidding or exaggerating. It is that good. Those discs are that good. What you're seeing on your screen is a little experiment I wanted to showcase to give you an idea of the differences between the versions of House of the Dragon that are currently available. Now, just because some of these look a certain kind of way doesn't mean they'll be the same for you. For example, let's assume for a second that you do have the exact same TV that I do, but you may have a different Blu-ray player, or you might be using your gaming console such as Xbox, PS4, PS5, whatever. That still will give you a solid image, but something like the PS5 doesn't support Dolby Vision yet, so it might not look as it is intended. Also, both the screenshots of the 4K Blu-ray and HBO Max versions that we've got here were taken with my phone looking onto the TV, so even though it may look very good to the human eye, you're not really getting the full scope of how the show looks in person. Just something to keep in mind, but I still wanted to attempt to give you examples. Alright, let's dig in these shots. First example is the scene where Damon takes his gold cloaks to patrol the streets of King's Landing. The bottom one is from streaming the show on my phone, and as you can see, it is basically unwatchable. It's far too dark to tell what's going on, and quite honestly takes you out of the show. Then we have a picture of the episode playing on HBO Max through my TV, and it does look far better. It does have Dolby Vision, but to me it looks a little bit too bright or even overexposed. Everything seems evenly lit, which feels unnatural for a night scene. And then finally we have the 4K, my favorite of these three, because it's got a nice balance between darkness while also being able to see what's going on. You can see the moonlight hitting the floor on the left corner while the rest of the scene remains in shadow, with the candles around the area lighting up the square town enough to be visible to the eye. And now here's an example taking place during the day, a day scene. Again, streaming it on my phone, it's pretty dull looking, while the HBO Max and 4K versions are honestly almost identical. If anything, the only difference I can point out is that the 4K seems a tad more colorful, but other than that, they look about the same. You be the judge. Finally, we have the closing scene of the pilot episode where Viserys tells Rhaenyra about Aegon's prophecy. Once more, streaming it on my phone is pretty unwatchable, while HBO Max encounters the same issues of being a bit too overexposed, while the 4K has having like a nice balance between brightness and the black levels. To repeat myself here before moving on one more time, because you're not getting the full scope between the HBO Max and 4K versions since they're screenshots from my phone onto my TV. I'm sorry I couldn't figure out a better way to show you the differences, but I hope this helps. And again, remember, just because it looks a certain way in my setup, it may look different in yours. You might have a better Blu-ray player than mine, or playing it through your gaming console. So just something to keep in mind. The amount of detail that you can see on the clothing and the props and the sets is just insanely good. Even the darker scenes of the show that a lot of fans hated at first, they have just such depth and richness to them. An example that comes to mind is episode 9, I believe the title is the Green Council, the one with the Greens and their coup. And that entire opening scene takes place at night and inside the Red Keep, and it just follows a little boy discovering that, spoilers, the king has died. So this entire scene is just lit by candles and the moonlight coming through the windows. So there's not a lot of sophisticated lighting going on, at least now that we can tell, especially when we were streaming it on HBO. And these discs just do such a good job at giving you a sense of like the tone that the creators wanted you to feel. Like it's just so loomy and it's so beautiful to look at. Yes, the image is still dark, but it's pretty. You can look at it, you can see the little details, on the wall. It's just incredible. Just to give you another example of how good the physical copy of the show is, when I was testing the show for the very first time, I took the disc out, put it on my 4K Blu-ray player, watched the show, had a pretty good time, took it out before I was gonna go to sleep. And as I was doing that, I noticed that I had played by accident the regular Blu-ray version of the show instead of the 4K Blu-ray. And even then, it looked pretty damn fantastic. It definitely looked better than what you can see with all the 4K Dolby Vision stuff on HBO. It looked better than any of that. So I genuinely thought that I was seeing the 4K version of the show when I was just watching the 1080p version. Once I did switch the disc between the Blu-ray and the 4K, and I had to rewatch the first episode all over again, I did notice some pretty significant differences, mainly on the darkness and the tones of the colors. But other than that, honestly, if you don't have a super fancy setup, if you don't have a 4K TV, just pick up the Blu-ray. It's pretty damn solid. It's better than what you can get on HBO Max. So again, it's worth it. So if you don't have it, if you don't have a 4K TV, just go with the Blu-ray because it is good. For the audio side of things, this thing packs a Dolby Atmos track as well as a 7.1 Dolby True HD track, and I believe it also packs a Dolby Digital 5.1 track for the dub options that the disc offers, such as German, French, Spanish, and a bunch many others. One of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to physical media and streaming, for that matter, is when the sound mix is all over the place. Like, for example, the dialogue will be very, very low while the sound effects are very, very high, and you have to be switching the volume up and down constantly throughout the movie or throughout the TV show, or vice versa. The sound effects are too low and the dialogue is too high. And I'm bringing this up because I recently was watching Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet on 4K Blu-ray, and man, is the sound mix for that baffling. I mean, in a dialogue-heavy movie, the dialogue you can barely hear it while the sound effects are blowing up your speakers. So it takes you out of the movie, and it is very distracting. I'm glad I don't have those complaints here with House of the Dragon, though. For the most part, everything is evenly balanced out. You can listen to the dialogue without problem. The sound effects, especially when there's a dragon action going on in the show, it's pretty immersive, and the Atmos certainly helps in that department. Alright, so who should purchase House of the Dragon on 4K or Blu-ray or both? I think if you really like the show and you wish to get the opportunity to see a better version quality wise from an audio and video standpoint, then you really can't go wrong with this. It's such an improvement from what you already have on HBO Max, and I really do hope that the people that actually pick it up come back online and gush about it, because it is really, really good. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point, but again, the Blu-ray is the best next thing. So if you don't have a 4K TV, pick that up. It's still very solid. Now, if you're only interested in picking up either the Blu-ray or the 4K because of the special features, then I am sorry to disappoint you, but it is really not worth buying this for the special features. Just especially frustrating because a show of this caliber, of this magnitude, with this reputation, franchise of this reputation, you would expect at the very least audio commentaries from the people that work on it behind the scenes, from the actors. You would expect like documentary style behind the scenes clips, stuff like that used to make physical releases back in the day great, but unfortunately that's not the case here. Now, the Blu-ray comes with this little booklet, kind of gives you like a guide of the title of every episode, what each disc contains. Comes with the digital code on the back. I'm not gonna show you that obviously, but to read you the special features on this one, on both the Blu-ray and the 4K, you have Welcome to Westeros, A New Reign, Return to Westeros, Before the Dance and Illustrated History with George R.R. Martin, Height of an Empire, Noble Houses, and Familiar Places. And then on disc 2 you have Return to the Seven Kingdoms and an introduction to every single one of the characters, which the cast. Sounds great, right? But every single thing in that I just described to you, you can probably find in the YouTube channel of Game of Thrones, in the official Game of Thrones channel. So it's pretty disappointing. At the very least, if they were gonna just include stuff that's already available, I would have thought that they would include like the episodes that the official Game of Thrones podcast covered. It's not there. So again, disappointing, but that is something that is progressively happening in physical media. Not much special features are included. There's barely any deleted scenes in this, not just this, but I'm just talking generalities here. So it is pretty disappointing from that standpoint. So I guess I can recommend this if you only are interested in the special features. For me though, I'm not entirely surprised by the lack of special features. Again, it's something that is constantly happening on Blu-ray releases, so knowing this in advance, I kind of already knew what to expect, so I wasn't too disappointed. I mostly picked up this physical copy of House of the Dragon because, to be honest, I really like the show. I know a lot of people don't like the changes to the books, but for a show that's based on a fictional, historical book written from the perspective of somebody who wasn't even there when the events happened, I think they did a pretty good job. So again, I just wanted to see a version of the show that actually looked great from almost every single perspective, from an audio perspective, from a video perspective. So I think I got that with this release of House of the Dragon. So again, if you have the money to spend in this physical copy, then I would definitely go for it, because from those things that I just described, from an audio and video quality standpoint, it's worth it. Also, a bit of a disclaimer too, don't expect me to review every single physical copy that comes out later in the year. I mainly did this because I really, really, really enjoy House of the Dragon. If anybody that knows me knows that I adore George R. Martin's world. I love A Song of Ice and Fire, and I was very excited about this show, and I was very happy when the show exceeded my expectations, even though I had some issues with it, mainly because of the time jumps that go on in the show. But other than that, I really like the show, and that is mainly why I was doing this review for you guys. So yeah, maybe eventually I will do another one just to help you guys decide if it's worth picking up a copy in 4K or Blu-ray. So yeah, be on the lookout for that, maybe, or not, I don't know. I know that I'm not in my usual setup that I use for these reviews, at least the ones that you saw me in the review for The Way of Water and Glass Onion. After all, it is the beginning of the year. I'm not home. I just spent the last 2-ish weeks, week and a half, reviewing this show, watching this show for this review. So yeah, well, hopefully on the next video I'll be back on my usual space. Josh D. Woodbury and Evan Harris are still hosting their show, That Indescribable Feeling, all about the award seasons this year, and expect some cool stuff on that front, so check them out. From a podcast perspective, we have some pretty exciting stuff coming in this year, so again, check us out, and if you like the podcast, consider rating us 5 stars on either iTunes, Spotify, or preferred way to listen to podcasts. And with all of that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, as people like to say on the end and the outros of these videos. And we will hopefully see you on the next podcast, on the next episode of the podcast, or in the next review. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.